Crime scene 2.
And that area was...
that area is where the red truck was.
Right. And you were, what do you call it, when you protect the area to make sure it's not disturbed as best you can? Is that what you were doing?
We do while we're there. Because when we take over from the officers that are doing the scene security is what we call it, we take over and then we become essentially the scene security as we're processing the scene.
And you saw Mr. Edward Campbell then as well?
Yes. To my recollection, yes, he was with SRT.
And what was your impression that he was out there trying to help him find the gun?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have for Trooper Ellison.
Ready, Rack?
No, sir, Your Honor.
Thanks, sir. You stand
We would ask that Trooper Ellison be released from his subpoena.
there. Okay.
No, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
Thanks, sir. Brother Evans, thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Your Honor, the state would call Senior Trooper C.M. Wade.
No.
You know, I do have one more question. I'm sorry. Can I
That's
ask you
fine.
before he leaves? I just...
Trooper Allison, if you'll come back up, please, sir. We've got one more question for you.
Trooper Ellison, I know, I'm pretty sure that the prosecutor asked you, did you process the truck other than taking the bodies out of the back? You didn't bother the inside, is that right?
The only thing that we did, we did look for a weapon and we took photographs. We did not process anything else.
So I know in your report it says no presumptive tests were done.
Right.
And when you talk about a presumptive test, you mean a presumptive test for blood and things like that, right?
Yeah, we did not test for blood. We didn't fingerprint anything. The only thing we did was processed essentially what was in the bed of the truck. Everything else was just photographs.
Your Honor, that's all I have. Just want to clarify.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Trooper Ellison, when you say weapons, do you mean a gun because that's what had been used in the shootout?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that what you were specifically looking for in the truck?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Well, were you looking for a specific gun or just any gun?
Any gun.
Make sure there were no weapons left at the scene.
Yes, sir.
Nothing further.
I don't have anything else.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Your Honor, the state would again call Senior Trooper Christopher M. Wade.
Your question like on the Bible and racial right? Do you solemnly swear that evidence you should give the court and the jury should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, can you state your name for the record?
Yes, sir. My name's Christopher Michael Wade
And where are you employed?
with the West Virginia State Police, currently at the Lewisburg Detachment.
Right. At the Lewisburg Detachment, what is your rank?
I'm currently a trooper first class, and essentially my responsibilities from day to day is field trooper responsibilities.
Now, you said day to day. Do you have other responsibilities?
Yes, sir. I've been fortunate in my career to be part of a couple different specialized units within the West Virginia State Police. I was with the crime scene for a time. I'm currently and was, at the time of this incident, with the Special Response Team, which the state police calls SRT.
Okay. Now, how long have you been with the West Virginia State Police?
I think approximately 8 years now. Yes, sir.
Did you work anywhere else in law enforcement before then?
Yes, sir. I actually worked for the state police as a dispatcher, and before that, I obtained a 4-year degree in criminal justice and a 2-year degree in homeland security.
Okay, and where are your degrees from?
Fairmont State University in West Virginia.
Trooper Wade, were you scheduled to work on January 1st of 2015?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay, and do you recall that day?
Yes, sir.
All right, do you recall this incident and why you might have been called to Lewisburg, West Virginia?
Yes, sir. I was scheduled for evening shift, so it was approximately 4 p.m. Whenever I was in my patrol car and heard radio traffic and different things going on, and that's whenever I responded to the area of Interstate 64 there in Greenbrier County. Initially, we were still looking for the red truck. That hadn't been located, so myself and among other local law enforcement and law enforcement from other areas started a search for that red truck.
And when you say you started the search, were you at that point concentrating on the area that's been testified to as the divide, or were you looking over a much larger area?
Sir, at that time we were covering an area of probably 30 to 40 miles of just interstate, and there was probably a police officer at every exit of the interstate for that stretch of road in an attempt to locate that vehicle.
At some point, was your attention, I guess, called to the divide, or did you respond to the divide?
Yes, sir, I did. The vehicle was located, and I responded along with other units to that area of the divide. I responded on the eastbound side of the divide.
Now, did you respond in your capacity, as you say, a road trooper, or were you responding in your capacity as SRT?
At that time, I was responding to my capacity as a road trooper. Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about what happened on the eastbound side of I-64?
Yes, sir. At that time, we knew the severity of the incident and basically the risk involved, and whenever we got to the area, we staggered our vehicles every so often. Again, we were within eyesight of each other and radio communication, and at that time there was officers responding from outside the area that didn't have radios or didn't have our frequency. We were basically monitoring or trying to shield ourselves from any kind of danger and observe and secure the area on the eastbound side of the divide.
Trooper, what is the scope of effort, I guess, as far as the number of people that are involved in this, if you have an estimation?
Yes, sir. And again, it would be only an estimation. I would say approximately 50 or 60 police officers total responded. Yes, sir.
All right. Now, at some point, did you change roles, so to say, and begin working with SRT?
Yes, sir. After the vehicle was located and we essentially secured the area of the divide to maintain a perimeter, maintain that no one would enter or leave, without us knowing about it or without our protection. At that time, we decided that the safest thing for us to do would have SRT to respond, which I'm a part of. And members of SRT are part of detachments all over southern West Virginia. We're not traditionally like the traditional team that the team is here and everyone's together and we're just waiting for that call. It's a concerted effort of individual troopers all along southern West Virginia. When we get the call, we all go to a location and meet up, and then we go to the scene.
Now, in responding as SRT, were you there to make sure no one else was in the divide? Is that
Yes,
one of the
sir.
goals?
Yeah, yes, sir. Initially, we were called because we didn't know where Eric Campbell was. In the interim of where we were requested to respond, of course, I was already there. In that interim, Eric Campbell was taken into custody. So SRT continued to respond because we didn't know if anybody else was in that divide. Whenever we got on scene, our directive at that time, with the assistance of a helicopter, we were going to clear that area and make sure that there was no other people in the divide.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, I'm going to hand you what's previously been marked and admitted as exhibit number 6 for the state. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, and would that assist you in illustrating your testimony to the jury?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, and you may approach if you'd like. Can you tell the jury exactly how your search began with the SRT?
Yes, sir.
And I'm happy to zoom in or as you need. So
I'm a little shorter. I think I can reach it here. This is essentially where crime scene 1, or what's being referred to as crime scene 1, occurred in the traffic stop. Now, this is the area right here where the truck was discovered. Whenever we performed this search, it was getting dark at the time, and that is why we performed this search with the assistance of a helicopter. Now, that helicopter was equipped with a large white light, and it also used technology that could see kind of like a heat image, like a thermal image of that area. Now, with the assistance of, we started the area right here. With the assistance of that helicopter, we started and pretty much flushed that whole area out up into this area, towards the top left-hand picture, towards this area. What you can't really tell from the picture is that area right there is full of brush, and it's almost impassable. It's just so thick. But we flushed that area first, and that took quite a bit of time. It was nighttime, and we were using night vision at the time to see with the assistance of the helicopter.
at some point, as an SRT member, were you satisfied that no one else was there in the divide?
Yes, sir. The helicopter and us in this collaborative effort, we did see things on the thermal imaging, and we sought those out, and it was deer, and we jumped animals. So, you know, we knew our thermal imaging was working, and we knew that we was clearing this area out, and there was no people left in that area.
Okay. At some point after you've assured yourself there were no other persons in the divide, what else were you looking for?
We cleared from the divide and came back out onto the interstate whenever we were told that we were going to do a second sweep. And this is practical. Whenever we operate, we'll do an initial search for people, and then we'll do what we call a secondary search, and that search is for weapons or anything else that is dangerous, which is a slower search. You know, of course, whenever we're there and there's imminent danger, we're looking for people and things that could really hurt us, and then the secondary search is for weapons or potential evidence.
Now, did you hear Trooper Ellison speak about Eric being brought back to the divide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did you personally work with him, or were you close to him?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay.
Myself and my team was there, and we started another search from the vehicle in this area in an attempt to recover a firearm, I believe.
Okay. Were you ever able to recover a firearm?
No, sir.
Okay. So at what time did you end the search? that search?
Sir, I can't say for certain. It was dark.
What was it? Was it late?
Yes, sir. That was well after the sun went down.
Okay. Now, did you come back to the divide?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when was that?
That was the following morning. I responded again in my regular duty, my capacity as a field trooper, in an attempt to assist K-9 with the recovery of what we believed was a firearm in the area.
Why would a K-9 be helpful in trying to recover a firearm?
Yes, sir. We use the K-9 in this particular instance, and this K-9 was trained in detecting explosives material and things of that nature. And granted, we're searching such a large area, it's very hard to interpret from the picture, but with this area, we thought that the K-9 would indicate on gunpowder or substances of that nature, which the dog's trained to do and has done in the past.
Okay. Was the K-9 ever able to locate a firearm?
No, sir. With the K-9, we searched the area that we covered the previous night whenever Edward Campbell was with us, and we never did get an indication from the K-9 that a firearm was.
All right. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Trooper Wade, I'm approaching you what's previously been marked as State's Exhibits 49 through 106. Would you take a moment and look at them?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, are those photographs?
Yes, sir, they are.
Have you looked at them?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize them?
I do, sir.
Do they fairly and accurately portray things as you saw them on or about January 2nd, 2015?
Yes, sir, they do. I took these pictures.
Would they aid you in illustrating your testimony to the jury?
Yes, sir, they would.
Your Honor, I would ask that Exhibits 49 through 106, marked and identified by the state, be admitted into evidence.
Any objection? Yes, sir. Motion in addition to evidence allowed.
Your Honor, I ask that they be published to the jury as Triple Wade illustrates his testimony.
Yes, sir.
Triple Wade, now, would you explain the process to the jury of how you might take photographs at a crime scene, particularly with respect to perspective and distance and that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. May I approach?
Yes.
What I wanted to gain from this picture is basically, of course, I'm focusing on these items right here that we've discovered in our search. But secondary in this foreground for reference, to just place where these items are in relation to the roadway in the foreground, and that's the eastbound side of the interstate. And you can see even from the eastbound side, you're kind of overlooking the roadway there.
Trooper Wade, if we could go back to the previous exhibit, the map, could you show us approximately where you located this, where this picture was taken?
Yes, sir. This picture was taken in this area right here. Again, this is the eastbound side, and this is the westbound side. This is essentially where we recovered the truck, and this is the area right here that we located these items, these photos.
And did you search that area the night before?
Yes, sir, we did. We searched it for people. Whenever we did a secondary search and was with Edward Campbell, we weren't in that area.
Now, on to the next picture. What does this picture show?
Yes, sir. This picture shows kind of what caught our attention, I think, initially, which is this blue and yellow earplugs here. And you can kind of see that there's other items around these earplugs. And granted, whenever we started taking these pictures, there was leaves. There's more leaves than there are in this picture.
So did you remove some of the leaves in order to be able to capture that image?
Yes, sir.
Moving on to Exhibit 51. Tell us about this one.
Yes, sir. I took this picture because in previous pictures, those earplugs were a reference. And what I wanted to reference here was this tree because it's very important. And this tree's a pretty large, significant tree, maybe that big around. But we found items over here, and we found items actually inside of this tree whenever we started looking more closely.
If we could look at Exhibit 52, what is that?
Yes, sir. What I'm doing with the picture, it might seem a little redundant, but I'm just kind of walking myself in from the perspective. That way it'd be easier to explain later on, and that was my mentality.
Would this be the order in which you took pictures?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is this the way you would approach every type of time you were collecting evidence and taking pictures?
Yes, sir.
All right, if you could.
Again, this is the tree. From the previous picture, you could kind of see more foreground, and this is the tree in the area around the bottom of it.
If we could turn our attention to Exhibit number 53.
Okay, from the previous picture, you were facing the backside of the tree, and in this picture, you're kind of you're seeing exactly what we discovered, which is, of course, the shiny objects inside of the tree isn't normal. It caught our eye, and we started looking into that and found several pieces of jewelry.
We could turn our attention to Exhibit number 54. What is that a picture of?
That is pictures of, it's a closer image of the previous picture. And, you can see you know, watches and other pieces of jewelry. I think that there's a set of keys in there, even.
Turn our attention to exhibit number 55.
Yes, sir. This is as close as I could to get a perspective with the camera here of what we found inside of the tree. Again, that's a gold watch, just change, a set of keys, and there's a lot of other items that the picture doesn't show. But as we keep removing those items, continue to take pictures.
And turn our attention to exhibit number 56. What is that a picture of?
Sir, this is a picture of like the base of that tree and the rooted area around it there.
All right, are there any items or anything that you see located around the base of the tree? It's not a trick question, then.
No, sir. No, sir. I was hoping I wasn't missing something.
I understand.
Yeah.
And turn our attention to exhibit number 57. What is that?
In this picture right here, I'm kind of building my memory. Whenever I took these pictures, I was playing for this. I referenced these rocks here. There's a rock in the upper right-hand corner and the upper left-hand corner, and this rock right here. And that's basically to show kind of how it was.
Turn our attention to exhibit number 58.
Sir, after we got there and we started taking pictures and we started finding items here and there, we didn't have any tools or anything like that. We kind of methodically started removing the leaves by hand, you know, because we didn't want to tear anything up. We didn't want to destroy or taint any evidence. And this is a picture showing, you know, an area. I don't know, from here to the wall, you know, squared up, just different items scattered about.
When you say you remove things like the leaves, do you treat that crime scene like layers?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We do because we never know what we're gonna find underneath the leaves.
Trooper Wade, turning your attention to exhibit number 59.
Sir, this is to gain a different perspective. This is kind of panned up from the scene, so I think overall, all of these items was found in an area, you know, as large as the jury box where you guys are seated, and we removed more leaves and found things, you know, kind of sporadically located. There's a large amount of paperwork and things of that nature that was all covered up previously, along with brass knuckles is what they're commonly referred to, and some other items of jewelry, and of course the earplugs that we saw pretty much at the very beginning.
Trooper Wade, turning your attention to exhibit number 60. What is that?
Yes, sir. That's a receipt from Advanced Auto Parts, but typically, as a field trooper or just working in law enforcement in general, anytime you're working with an investigation, you know, receipts are very important. And I wanted to obtain a picture of this whenever I was on scene because it kind of sets a staple in time, essentially. You know, it tells you that someone was here at this date and time, and you know, more specifically, different items that they purchased at that time. So it kind of helps you set up a timeline for an investigation.
If we could zoom in on that. What date was that receipt issued, Trooper, if you can tell?
It's displayed December 28, 2014, and the time stamp is 15:02, so, or 1,500 hours and 2 seconds. So it's essentially 3 o'clock.
And where does that receipt purport to be from?
Lawrenceville, Sawney Road in Sawney, Georgia.
Turning your attention, Trooper, to exhibit number 61. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes,
What
sir.
is that?
This image is significant because you know, sometimes people find change. You know, sometimes you find change under your couch or in a parking lot. But this is in the middle of the woods, and it's not really it's important. But the .22 caliber unfired round is what I was wanting to kind of capture in the picture, along with the chain.
And turning your attention to exhibit number 62, what is that picture of?
This image is just a closer representation of the previous image, which is the .22 caliber unfired round.
Trooper, turning your attention to exhibit number 63.
Yes, sir. Again, we saw these earplugs from previous photographs, and this is a closer image of that area. You know, more specifically, different items of jewelry and change and pins.
Trooper, at the time you photographed this picture, had the earplugs been moved relative to the time that they were in any other picture?
No, sir.
Okay, as well as those items, had they been disturbed?
No, sir.
Your Honor, Trooper, turning your attention to exhibit number 64. What is that?
Sir, again, this is more jewelry that we found. And what's not on the image is the earplugs that's right here. So it's just a closer shot and perspective of what was laying there on the ground.
Turning your attention to State's exhibit number 65. What is that?
Yes, sir. This is several items of paperwork and things like that. And of course, there's a change purse. And what's kind of hard to capture in a photograph is kind of like the layout of the land. If this wasn't a two-dimensional image and it was three-dimensional, you'd be looking at a slope or a slight grade from here down, and what these items are placed in is kind of like a cavity or a void, like up underneath of there. Presumably where a rock was removed and these things were kind of replaced in that spot.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 66.
Yes, sir. This image is of, again, items that we're finding in that area from the previous photo. And again, there's another .22 caliber unfired round.
Trooper, if I could draw your attention to that right there. What is that, if you can tell? That silver object.
This right here, sir, it looks metallic. It doesn't look organic like something from nature.
You mentioned earlier about finding brass knuckles, or are these the brass knuckles?
Yes, sir. The again, perspective and dimensionality. That is the brass knuckles. I just didn't recognize it where they were they're standing on end. You're kind of looking at the top of them.
Is that how you found it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Moving along to State's Exhibit 67.
Yes, sir. This is just kind of a different perspective on all of those items as I found them before they were moved.
And can you describe the void you were speaking about earlier, I guess, with using this picture?
Yes, sir. Proportionally, this change purse, if I remember correctly, is probably this long. So you're looking at a total overall area of maybe like this. There was a lot of space where those items were located, up underneath kind of like a root wall, and where the ground just kind of went around this rock that was removed.
Trooper, turning your attention to exhibit number 68, I think we might have already gone over that one.
Yes, sir.
At this point, can you look at the top right corner of the picture?
Yes, sir. That's my hand on January 2nd.
Okay.
With a rubber glove. But again, the time is December 28, 2014 at 3 o'clock.
Okay, at this point, are you beginning to excavate the evidence out of the scene?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Again, it's our common practice to take as many photos as we can with the area being undisturbed, because we never know what we're going to find out later on. But yeah, we take pictures of what we find, and then we start taking those items out, essentially meticulously, in order to document them.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 69.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
This is a digital watch that was found in the same area.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 70, Trooper.
Yes, sir. From the previous images, the change on the ground and neon fired .22 caliber round, this is when I'm collecting that.
Trooper Wade, if you could look at exhibit number 71.
Yes, sir. Again, it's just easier to perceive what I was looking at the time, to take a picture as I'm collecting that evidence. So that's kind of why I have my hand laid out like this, so you can see individual pieces that we're finding. Whereas before, the picture was just kind of like a bunch of dirt and rocks, and you can see shiny things here and there.
Does this help as kind of an inventory of what you're collecting?
Yes, sir. Again, these are different items that was recovered from the ground in the same area.
And this is State's Exhibit number 72 for the record. Turning your attention to State's Exhibit 73.
Yes, sir. Again, this is fortunately a better perspective of these brass knuckles that we found in that area, as we found them.
Turning your attention to State's Exhibit 74.
Yes, sir. Again, anytime we get any kind of like little pieces of paperwork, you don't know how significant it'll be later on. But again, you know, it's documentation, and potential handwriting samples could be important later on. So.
Turning your attention to State's Exhibit number 75.
Sir, these are the brass knuckles from previous images.
State's Exhibit number 76.
Sir, again, there was a lot recovered that, I say that there was a lot recovered. There was several small items that were recovered that you couldn't plainly see from previous images because, dirt and things like that are in the way. And but this is jewelry that we recovered from that area. I think if I remember right, as I'm collecting evidence and methodically taking one piece at a time, you might see something underneath of it that wasn't previously captured on photo.
Trooper Wade, turning your attention to kind of the top part of this photo there, it seems like there's a lot of dirt on your hands.
Yes, sir.
And why is that?
A lot of this stuff appear to be buried or hidden.
So is that part of the excavation that you're getting this dirt on your hands?
Yes, sir.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 77.
These are two more unfired rounds. Those aren't traditional coins, U.S. currency, and keys, and again, a lot of dirt.
Now,
And so we're having to kind of uncover.
are those 2 rounds in addition to the other round that you had previously spoke to about to the jury?
Yes, sir.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 78.
These are a set of keys, and I think from maybe the first couple images we saw that tree, and you could see through the void in that tree that there was some items in there, and I believe that that's where these keys had come from, or from where a lot of items came from.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 79.
Yes, sir. This is again another receipt, and this is from Walmart. It appears that location and all that's noted in the date and time. It says Hillsborough, North Carolina, and the date's December 31st, 2014 at 13:58, which is essentially 2 minutes till 2 p.m.
Okay. 2 minutes till 2 p.m.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Turning your attention to exhibit number 80.
Yes, sir. This is a small change purse that I found, and I think if you'll remember back, there was an image where it looks like a blue bifold notebook, and there's this change purse down there. And this is, I'm starting to collect those individually.
Now, turning your attention to exhibit number 81.
Yes, sir. This is as the first time I opened this change purse, and as I found it.
Okay, so with respect to the image on the left,
Yes, sir.
that's as you opened it up.
Yes, sir. And of course, you don't know what's underneath of that, so that's the rest of the story, essentially.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 82.
Yes, sir. Again, this is the blue bifold notebook from previous images, and this is as I'm starting to collect those items.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 83.
Yes, sir. This is a credit card or debit card of some kind with the name Dora Faulkner on it. Which belonged to the female victim.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 84.
Again, this is in the pink lady's pocketbook, and of course the North Carolina driver's license of Dora Faulkner, and this is half the pocketbook, and as it's opened up, of course, picture of her and Jerome.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 85.
Yes, sir. This is a checkbook, essentially, and this is folded up, but it was a blank check. And this was photographed, again, it's part of all the other items, so it's photographed all the other items, and you never know what's significant later on.
And in exhibit number 86, what does that show?
This is a check with the names Jerome Faulkner and Dora Faulkner on it with their address.
And what is their address?
8067 Highway 96, Oxford, North Carolina.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 87, Trooper Wade.
Yes, sir. Again, from those previous images, you kind of only saw the outside of this book. This is as I'm opening it to kind of give a perspective on what's its contents, which is a checkbook.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 88.
Yes, sir. This is, there's a lot of items, several loose papers and things of that nature, and this is an appointment for some kind of medical appointment for Dora Faulkner.
Turning your attention to exhibit number 89.
Yes, sir. I think that this is medical information or appointment information, something from a hospital or medical facility for Jerome Faulkner.
And turning your attention to exhibit number 90, Trooper Wade, and I apologize, I believe I've gotten some pictures out of order for you. So if you could take us back.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry about
no,
that.
that's okay. And you may not have gotten those pictures out of order because, well, this is, you might be thinking, I don't even know what I'm looking at, but this is where the notebook and the purse and all of those things that there was just photographs of, for all of that information and all that evidence was collected from. Again, this is a two-dimensional image, but if it was three-dimensional, you would see, again, this rocky bank and this void underneath of the earth right here. And then this right here, that essentially that ridge line where this void goes up and under.
Now, is this picture taken after you've removed those items in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and thank you. If we could go on to image number 91.
Okay. From the previous picture, just to kind of reference, this is that void that we just looked at really closely. And those items that was previously photographed, this is kind of the general area now. So.
Trooper Wade, if you look at exhibit number 92.
Yes, sir. These are different items that was collected. Let me say this took a while, and I think that this was near the tree.
Okay. Is that the tree in the background there?
Yes, sir.
And so are these the items that were collected from inside of the tree?
Yes, sir.
Going on to exhibit 93.
Yes, sir. These are the keys that was inside the tree. That was one of the first photographs we looked at. Of course, different items as I'm taking them out from inside the tree.
Now, if you could look up at the top left corner.
Yes, sir.
Did you have to break any wood or get any, to extract anything or otherwise damage?
Yes, sir. It took some work to ensure that I was getting all of the evidence out of the tree, and of course, you never have enough hands. You need a flashlight and gloves and everything else. So there's other people that's there, holding lights and things of that nature, so I can get these things out of there.
Okay. Thank you, Trooper. If you would turn your attention to exhibit number 94.
Yes, sir. Again, these are more items which came from the inside of the tree, so I'm collecting them.
Exhibit number 95.
Yes, sir. These again are items that I'm taking as inventory as I'm taking them out of the tree.
Exhibit number 96.
Yes, sir. There's in fire department pins, watches, coins, and jewelry.
Exhibit number 97.
Yes, sir. More items. There's a lot inside that tree, and just more change and jewelry, things of that nature. Okay. Now, I know that I kind of gained a perspective before, but this is a log, and we were going into the woods initially that morning, and our objective is, we knew that there was a firearm, or believed that there was a firearm that we needed to recover, and different things. So our area where all the jewelry was recovered didn't really stop our search. We continued to search the area and found this log.
If you could tell us what that, this is exhibit number 98.
Yes, sir. And again, we found this purse, and I backed up and took a picture of the log to kind of gain perspective. But this is a large pink female purse. This is as we opened the purse without taking anything out of it or inventorying anything, but it's the ID of Dora Faulkner inside the purse.
And that's as you found it?
Yes, sir.
You could look at this next picture.
Yes, sir. It's, again, perspective's everything. We can't go back to West Virginia and go to the median, but with that in mind, this is in the woods as we're kind of collecting evidence in the area where we found them, and looking through the median, you can't see the other side. You can't see the westbound side. If I would have turned around to the left, you'd be overlooking the eastbound lane. But I turned around and took a picture just to gain perspective. That's in the westbound, or that's a picture taken in the northern direction, in an attempt to locate any image or perspective of the westbound side. This is the .22 caliber revolver. Whenever we found this gun, it did have a rock on top of it, which you can kind of tell that there was something on top of it, from the leaves and the dirt and things around it. So, but that rock's been already removed prior to taking it.
Relative to the pocketbook, where was the revolver?
It was, if I remember correctly, it was a significant distance away, and it wasn't, like if, for instance, if this is the purse, it wasn't right beside of it. It was spread out, probably equally as spread out as the other items, like the jewelry and things of that nature, proportionally spread out.
Was it in the same general vicinity as everything else, or was it outside of that general vicinity?
It was in the same general vicinity. I mean, that area would fit inside of this room, probably fit in, I'd say. That's safe to say.
As you removed that rock, or were there any other items or anything else around that gun?
Not that I recall, sir.
And as you took that rock out, is that as it appeared?
Yes, sir.
If you could explain what that picture is.
Again, this kind of better embodies what we were dealing with at the time. Whenever we were looking around, I think this was the last thing that we found, and we kept looking until we found this. But there's just a rock that it looked like it had been broken from the earth, or not. The rock wasn't broken, but the earth was broke around it. You could tell something had been moved. And that's when we removed that rock, and you can kind of see in the void right here, that something was here at one time on top of this.
Is this during the excavation of that gun?
Yes, sir, it is, and this is how we found it. We always want to take pictures whenever we recover a firearm to ensure, ammunition, whether that ammunition's been, fired at the time, and things of that nature. So that's why this picture was taken.
Can you tell us about the condition of the gun?
Yes, sir. Other than being dirty, I've never, seen this is a Rome brand, 22 caliber revolver. I've never seen one before, but I'm familiar with firearms. This appeared to, other than being dirty, the gun appeared fine. We never hand over evidence as far as firearms that are loaded. Of course, unsafe practices and things of that nature. So you never know what the condition of firearms in. So whenever we check it, we document it and make sure that gun is rendered safe. And I rendered this gun safe, and I remember it functioned, it turned, and I was able to unload it at
Was
the
it
time.
smashed or beaten up in any way?
No, sir.
If you could turn your attention to this picture, Trooper Wade, what is this?
Yes, sir. Well, whenever we arrived on scene earlier that day, we actually parked on the westbound side, started at the truck, and kind of went through the woods. So this is as we're coming out of the woods. So we have this scene where we collected and photographed all this evidence, and we basically turned straight towards the westbound side of the interstate and started walking in a straight line. Whenever we got to the westbound side of the interstate, this is essentially where we ended up. And of course, it's kind of hard to look at this and say, well, that's rocky, but those rocks are huge. And that's pretty much the lay of the land towards the westbound side.
Looking at Exhibit 106, Trooper Wade, can you describe that picture?
Yes, sir. Again, this is essentially the top of the high wall, overlooking the westbound side. So proportionally to that trooper's leg right there, I mean, maybe 30 feet, 30, 40 feet from the top edge to the bottom edge. And this right here, it appears to kind of be the bottom, but that's like a ledge and a landing, and it goes down past this right here as well. So.
Thank you, Trooper. If you could have a seat.
Yes, sir.
Approach.
Yes.
Trooper Wade, I'm going to approach with a couple different items of evidence, and if you could take a moment and examine each one.
Yes, sir.
Approach.
Yes.
Trooper Wade, I'm approaching you what's previously been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 107. Would you take a moment and examine it?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, sir, I do.
How do you recognize it?
It appears to be the same wallet I recovered on January 2nd, the time when these pictures were taken. I took the liberty of opening it, sir.
And if you would, does it appear to be in the same condition as it was when you collected it?
Yes, sir, it does. It's not been cleaned or anything, still has dirt on it. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'd ask that State's Exhibit 107 be admitted in evidence.
Then comment. Any objection?
No, sir.
Motion introduced and have slide.
Your Honor, I'd ask that Trooper Wade be allowed to publish that to the jury.
Yes, sir.
Wade, you just step down and just kind of go along and let the jury kind of look at it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you need to see what you're supposed to see, and so you may stand up, particularly those in the back row, if you want to get a closer look at this or any evidence. And I would remind all of you, if there's something you think you're supposed to see and you can't see it, or like you're supposed to see it, don't sit silent. Let us know. Stand up, yell, raise your hands. We'll make sure you do see it. Same thing if something comes up that you think you're supposed to hear and you did not, don't sit silent. Let us know, and we'll make sure you do hear. Yes, sir. You may continue.
Sir. Aside from this sticker right here, this is how I found it. You can see dirt here on the corner. I'll walk around, but of course it was. There are several items in here. That's as it was photographed. around, but this is the dirt. Just small part in the back.
All right, February 17th.
Yes.
Look at it. I'll move on. Now, retrieve that.
Yes, sir.
Away.
Smell it, close.
Sorry. Do you want this over there? Or leave it? Trooper Wade, I'm approaching you with an item that's been marked for identification purposes. It states Exhibit number 108. Would you take a moment and look over that, please?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, sir, I do.
Is it the same or substantially similar condition as the last time you saw it?
Yes, sir, it is.
How do you recognize it?
It has checks contained within with the name Jerome Faulkner and Dora Faulkner on it. And this check, the outside of it is the one from previously photographed. It was folded whenever I initially found it, so it's dirt on it.
Your Honor, we ask that State's Exhibit number 108 be admitted into evidence for substantive purposes.
Any objection? Motion to introduce to evidence, allowed.
Trooper Wade, if you could take a moment and publish that to the jury before we'll allow.
Yes, sir. You may stand there.
Again, this is the single check that was kind of folded in that first image. And I took a picture of it, unfolded it in there, but it was Jerome Faulkner.
You need to speak up so that everybody can hear you, particularly
Yes, sir.
the attorneys for the defendant.
If you would, just say,
Yes.
tell the court what
Yes,
you...
sir. I was explaining to members of the jury that this is the checkbook I found. And whenever I initially found it, the check was folded and it kind of stuffed in here, but I unfolded it in order to obtain a picture of it, and it has the names Jerome Faulkner and Dora Faulkner.
And you make sure everyone else has had a chance to see it, and if you, when you're done, if you would, just return to your seat. Trooper Wade, if I could retrieve 108 from you, and I'm going to ask you to examine an item that has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 109.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, sir, I do.
Is it in the same or substantially similar condition as the last time you saw it?
Yes, sir, it is.
All right, how do you recognize it?
I recognize it from the photographs here, and I remember it.
What is it?
It's a pair of brass knuckles,
Is it
or
the same?
what's commonly referred to as brass knuckles.
Is it the same pair of brass knuckles you found in the divide off of I-64 in West Virginia?
Yes, sir, it is.
Your Honor, I'd ask that item number 109, a pair of brass knuckles, be admitted into evidence for substantive purposes.
Any objection? Motion allowed.
Your Honor, I ask that they be published to the jury.
Yes.
Trooper Wade, again,
You may stand
making
back.
sure that you speak loudly enough for everybody to hear anything that you, any response to a question you might make. But if you just would, just show it to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
These are the brass knuckles I found in the woods, and was previously showed the photographs I took on that day.
If you would return to your seat, Trooper Wade. May I approach?
Yes.
Trooper Wade, while I retrieve Exhibit 109 from you, I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 110. If you would take a moment and examine it.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize
Yes, sir, I do.
it? Is it in the same substantially similar condition as the last time you saw it?
Yes, sir.
All right. And how do you recognize it?
Sir, these are 3 unfired .22 caliber rounds, the ones that were collected on the scene on January 2nd.
Your Honor, I ask that they be admitted into evidence as Exhibit number 110 for substantive purposes.
You good?
Your Honor, I ask that Trooper Wade be allowed to publish them to the jury.
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, again, if you would just step down, if you just would show the members of the jury the 3 bullets that are marked as State's Exhibit 110.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, I'm going to approach with an item that has been marked as State's Exhibit number 111 for identification purposes. And while I retrieve 110 from you, if you would take a moment and review it. Do you recognize it, Trooper Wade?
Yes, sir, I do.
How do you recognize it?
This is the advanced auto parts receipt that I collected on January 2nd from the scene photographed here. The date, December 28th, 2014 at 1500 hours and 2 seconds.
Is it in substantially the same or similar condition as it was when you collected it from the divide off of I-64 in West Virginia?
Yes, sir, it is.
Your Honor, I'd ask that State's Exhibit number 111, a receipt from Advanced Auto Parts collected from West Virginia, be admitted into evidence.
You good? Yes, sir. No plan.
Trooper Wade, again, if you would just allow the jurors to see it, if the court would allow us to publish that to the jury.
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, have you had a chance to show that to all the jurors?
Yes, sir, I did.
Right. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, I'm approaching with some item that's been marked as State's Exhibit number 112 for identification purposes. Would you look over it while I return 111 to the clerk?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is it?
This is a receipt from Walmart that I collected on January 2nd at the scene. And the date and time on this receipt's December 31st, 2014 at 13:58 hours and 6 seconds.
Trooper Wade, is it in the same or substantially similar condition as to when you saw it last?
Yes, sir, it is.
Your Honor, I'd ask that Exhibit number 112, a receipt from Walmart in Hillsborough, North Carolina, be marked and be admitted into evidence.
You good?
Yes,
Well,
Trooper Wade, if you could again publish that to the jury. May you publish that, Your Honor?
yes.
Would you take a moment and look at item 113?
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it?
Sir, this is one of the items of jewelry that was collected on January 2nd.
What does it appear to be?
Appears to be a yellow gold wedding band.
Is in the same or substantially similar condition as when you saw it on January 2nd, 2015?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I ask that item 113 be admitted into evidence, a gold ring.
Yeah, that's why.
Trooper Wade, excuse me, Your Honor, may he publish that?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, if you would allow the jurors to have a look at item 113.
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, if the jurors had a chance to look at item number 113.
Yes, sir, they have.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, turning your attention back to I believe back to evidence item number 106, the picture of the Rome revolver. What did you do with that revolver?
Sir, that item was collected as evidence and secured. And whenever we cleared this scene and was done obtaining photographs and, you know, felt confident that we had collected all the evidence that we could, we returned to the Lewisburg detachment of the West Virginia State Police, where we met with the detectives from North Carolina and transferred that evidence, sir.
Okay, so was it ever suspected that this weapon was used in the shootout in West Virginia?
No, sir.
Okay. And was that evidence turned over to detectives in North Carolina?
Yes, sir.
May I approach?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, I'm approaching you with an item that's been marked for identifications for the purposes of State's Exhibit number 114. At first, I'm going to ask you to read here and identify whether or not this is your writing or not.
No, sir, it is not.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about what's here?
Okay, yes, sir. There's a line here that says case number, which is part of just a general format for this evidence collection box. That case number is 1503001. There's an item number, 191, and the offense is murder. The date collected on this box is indicated January 2nd, 2015, and it says collected by D. McPhee. And of course the description of the item is a Rome .22 caliber revolver with the serial number.
Can you read the serial number?
Yes, sir. It's 15539. and it says location where found, West Virginia.
All right, I'm going to open this up. Now, if I could have the assistance of the evidence officer to just walk up and make sure I cut this open the right way. You can take it over this way. There we go. There we go. Open the contents of the box. I'm going to ask you to look over this item and see if you recognize it.
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is it?
Excuse me, sir. This is the revolver that's here in the photographs, which is the same revolver I recovered on January 2nd, 2015.
How do you know that?
It's been, I would assume it's been secured in this box, but it's got dirt on the handles. Appears to be the same one. It's the same one in the photograph, sir.
Right. Now, these bags right here, do you recognize them?
Yes, sir.
And how do you recognize them?
These bags appear that they are the same bags that we use with the West Virginia State Police commonly, and this appears to be my handwriting on the outside of the bag.
I'm going to place a sticker on the gun of 114A. So you recognize that gun?
Yes, sir, I do.
And it's in the same substantially similar condition as it was when you saw it on January 2nd?
Yes, sir, it is.
And you recognize the bags as what you used to collect the gun from the woods in West Virginia?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I ask that 114A be admitted into evidence.
You gonna admit 14 also?
114 is the box it came in, and 114A is the actual
So the
gun.
box and the contents,
There
and
it is.
separately the revolver?
Yes.
Any objections? Making an addition to explain.
Trooper Wade, if you would take a moment and examine that firearm and make a determination about whether it's in a safe condition.
Yes, sir. Can I remove it from this box?
If you could just leave it in the box.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, it appears to be safe. I can't remove the cylinder or look and see if there's any. But if this is the way that it was packaged and the way that it was transferred, I unloaded this gun, and if it hadn't been opened since then, it was safe whenever it was packaged.
If you could just display this gun for the jury, if you would publish it to them. You want me to publish that?
Yes, sir.
Now, approach.
Yes, sir.
Wait, if I could take a moment to retrieve 114 and 114A from you.
Yes, sir.
Trooper Wade, other than generating a report about your activities, did this crime scene, did this conclude your participation in this case?
Yes, sir, it did.
I don't have any other questions for Senior Trooper Wade at this time.
Good, good,
Trooper Wade, how did you know to look for items of evidence out there?
Sir, I was following a directive. The previous night on January 1st, Edward Campbell was taken to the scene in an effort to recover evidence. So presumably there was evidence to be recovered.
And because he told you there was evidence.
Objection.
No.
Sir, he didn't tell me anything.
Well, was it your understanding that he had indicated that there was evidence out there to be recovered?
Objection.
Who directed you to go find to look for a gun?
Sir, each SRT team has a team leader, essentially, and he's essentially the supervisor of a team, and it was his instructions that, hey, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to perform this operation. And he said that Edward Campbell was going to be with us.
And so did the team leader give you some information that there may be a gun out there in that area?
Objection.
Oh.
Yes, sir. He gave the indication that we were there, but we were there to perform essentially an escort.
For who?
For Edward Campbell, sir.
So he was out there with you
Yes, sir.
while you were searching for the gun.
Yes, sir.
And someone told you there might be a gun out there, and that was your team leader, right?
He told me that we were going to be performing an escort in an attempt to recover evidence, being a gun.
Now, if you could help me, Trooper, could we go back to the area? I could find this. Talking about the overview exhibit. I don't know exactly which. Six. Exhibit 6. Can you see that on the screen, please?
Trooper, if you would help me here. Show us again where the location of the red truck was.
Yes, sir. May I stand up?
Sure.
Again, this is where the scene, essentially the traffic stop was. And this is telling, this area right here, there's kind of like a dark spot in the trees where this ravine kind of dips down in, but essentially it was in this area.
And is that roughly about a mile from crime scene 1?
Now, I'd say that's a fair approximation, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, this is the northern part of this exhibit. And I think this is a Google map. So it would be the northern side, of the northeast side is the westbound lane. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And
This is the westbound lane. This is the
eastbound.
Yes, sir.
Were you on the scene when Mr. Campbell was arrested? Or in the area?
Yes, sir, I was in the area.
Do you know where he was arrested?
It's my understanding that he was arrested on the westbound side. When he was arrested, I was on the eastbound side, essentially in this area.
Right
here.
So he was arrested up here?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you the next day, it was about 10 a.m., is that right, when you went back to search for the crime scene?
I don't recall, but it seemed like the first thing I did that morning. Yes,
Your
sir.
your report said 1000.
Yes, sir.
So is that 10 a.m.?
Yes, sir.
And you give the coordinates of the exact location where you found these items of evidence. And in your report, how did you describe that, where you found the gun?
Sir, I don't recall.
No, you don't have your report with you. I'm sorry.
No, sir.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a blank copy of this? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No, I'll do it this way. I'm just gonna call this defense 2, I think. Yeah, approach your own. Yes. Wait, I'm approach with what I believe is a memorandum of your report. Do you recognize that?
Yes, sir.
It's
I do.
now, I did highlight it, so this is
Okay.
the only copy I've got. But would this refresh your recollection as to how you described the location of where you found the gun?
That's marked as an exhibit 1.
I'm sorry, Defendant's Exhibit number 2 for purposes of just refreshing the trooper's recollection.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you'll take a look at that, and you can read over it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, did you describe the areas, the revolver was located under a rock in an area near the edge of the median at the 167 mile marker eastbound side?
Sir, in this memorandum, I include or describe items that were recovered in reference the revolver located under the rock in the median at the 167 mile marker, the eastbound side.
Yes, sir. Now, may I see exhibit number 49, please? May I approach you?
Yes.
Now, in exhibit number 49, I think it was the first one that the state published. Do you recognize that photo?
Yes, sir, I do.
Now, is this the general area where you found the items of evidence?
Yes, sir, it is.
Now, in this photo, you appear to have taken a photo of sort of the overall area.
Yes, sir.
And in the background there, can you see the eastbound highway?
Yes, sir.
And how far away from the eastbound highway are these items of evidence?
I would say, I would have to approximate, sir. I would say maybe 50 to 60 yards, but of course there's sharp decline in elevation. There's a high wall on that side as well.
So the elevation there to the eastbound is going down?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And now, were you said you were in the area when Mr. Campbell was arrested, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Where were you?
I was on the eastbound side, actually outside of my car, pretty close to the area where these items were recovered, but I was in the roadway.
Right.
So, yes, sir.
And was it your understanding that he was arrested on the westbound side?
Yes, sir.
And now, how far from where you are to get to, you talked about that it was very difficult to travel in this area because of some of the brush and briars and things like that. Is that right?
Well, yes, sir. The aerial photo from before, I was describing the search that we did initially for other people. The top of the hill is kind of pretty much open. There's a photo, I think one of the last photos I took. It's pretty open. There's sporadic brush here and there, but once you start down the other side, it's thick. It's really thick.
When you say the other side, you mean the westbound side?
Whenever you, no, I'm referring to just basically the median where it tapers back together in general, east and west.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so how far were you when you located these items from the westbound side?
300 or 400 yards, I'd say. Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
substantially farther from that location to where Mr. Campbell was arrested
Yes, sir.
is the westbound side.
Yes, sir.
Now, I think you said, Trooper Wade, that you just turned the items over. You did not conduct any presumptive tests or anything like that on any of these items, did you?
No, sir.
And you were wearing gloves throughout this search, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And is that to protect yourself as well as to protect the items of evidence?
Yes, sir.
And when you're doing these types of crime scene investigations, I mean, you're trying to protect the items of sort of different things that may have been left on the items of evidence. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Trace evidence?
Trace evidence, such
Yes,
as
sir.
blood and things like that, for later testing.
Yes, sir.
When you collected these items, did you do anything to clean them off, or did you essentially just put them in a bag and turn them over?
I didn't clean anything, sir. No, sir.
And Trooper Wade, on the date that you went back, I think it was January 2nd in the morning, you went back out there to look for the evidence. You mentioned that you parked on the westbound side, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And once you found these items of evidence, you had to travel back up to the westbound side to get back to your car, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that was a much farther trip back to the westbound side than it would have been just to walk out on the eastbound side, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, sir. Yes, sir.
And the final photo that the state showed of the area, the two ledges, the rock ledges, I call them, is that a photo close to the westbound side?
Yes, sir. That's a photo of as overlooking the westbound side, yes, sir.
So to get back out to the westbound side, you had to climb up that ledge, or could you walk through there?
No, you're looking down at the westbound side, sir, in the photo. So you'd have to go over the rock, or actually the way we left that day is there was this rock ledge, and then it kind of went out onto the high wall where the high wall tapered down to where the ravine is in the truck. So it wasn't a difficult trek to get out of the woods on the westbound side the way that we took, because it all kind of like tapered back downhill.
But you didn't take the route that where you understand Mr. Campbell was arrested, did you?
Sir, I don't know exactly where he was arrested.
But to go out in the area where the photos were, would the person have to climb down the rock to get out?
Yes, sir. The divide in the rocks was wide enough someone could probably, walk down in between the rocks.
So you could walk down through the rocks and just walk out?
You could, yes, sir.
Okay, or climb over, whichever.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned that you secured the gun that morning, and that you don't turn it over in an unsafe way. Is that right?
No, sir. It's not our common practice. Again, there's always the exigent circumstance, but typically, and in this instance, the gun was remained safe before we turned it over.
Does that mean you took the bullets out?
Yes, sir.
And were there 6 bullets in the gun?
I don't recall. My report says that there were 6 bullets. So yes, sir.
And they were all unfired?
Yes, sir.
Nothing further on.
Did Rennick? Yes, just a moment. Trooper Wade, you were wearing gloves just like you were a moment ago at the time you were handling this evidence.
Yes, sir.
And were there any other guns or anything else that you were handling at the time that you were dealing with this evidence?
No, sir.
So, you said you used to be on the crime scene team as far as West Virginia State Police?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have any discussion or training about evidence transfer?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury what evidence transfer is?
Yes, sir. Basically, what we do in this instance isn't an isolated instance where there's crimes that occur in other states or we have to transfer evidence over. We essentially make a property receipt and describe the property that we're going to transfer. And in this instances, and it's common practice that there's a documentation or a narrative of where this evidence came from. And that's transferred as well, and there's it's authorized officially with a signature. So it's usually an itemized list, and both parties sign. So one department has evidence. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to give you, tell you how I obtained it, and then have you sign the paper, and I'll sign the paper, and that's typically how it happens.
Now, that bag that you saw inside the box on the item 114, was that your bag?
Yes, sir.
All right. And is that significant in that respect?
Yes, sir.
Now, you mentioned earlier about trace evidence.
Yes, sir.
And you were using gloves. Why do you use gloves when you're handling like a firearm?
Sir, typically wear gloves whenever we know that we're going to be processing a scene or anything's potentially could be altered or tainted. That's in an effort not to destroy or alter any evidence is why we wear these gloves. In particular, and as it pertains to a firearm, of course, there's, trace DNA, which trace DNA's, or not trace DNA, trace evidence, which is essentially evidence that comes along with the evidence that you're collecting. So there could be fingerprints, DNA, blood, gunshot residue, a lot of different evidence that would come from a firearm as well as ballistic forensics, things of that nature.
So with respect to the glove, what you're trying to do is make sure you don't add any of your evidence to that evidence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And did you observe those precautions that day?
Yes, sir.
Now, you mentioned earlier about the elevation change on the eastbound side. Would you describe close to where you recovered that evidence? Was there a high wall there?
Yes, sir. From the photo, the perspective there, you know, if I would walk straight towards the eastbound side from where that evidence was collected, there was a high wall. It's a rock cliff, probably equal to the distance from the ceiling to the floor. It's significant. However, whenever SRT and myself cleared the woods that night, maybe better described as, you know, if the vehicle ended, or the red truck ended low in the ravine off the side of the road. So if you're at the truck, you're going to walk uphill and then it'll go downhill. You know, hence the elevation on both sides of the roadway. So from where the evidence was, you could walk straight away from the evidence, and the hill would gradually taper down, so towards the roadway. But again, it was thick over in that area, and we parked on the westbound side that morning.
Okay, thick over in which area?
On the eastbound side. And from the aerial photo, you'll see where the divide begins, where the traffic stop occurred, and where the divide ends towards the top and comes back together again. The brush was unreal. We couldn't hardly walk through there or get around. So,
now, with respect to the area where you found the evidence the next day, how was that compared to the area you were talking about just now?
It was clear. It was towards the top of the hill, open area, pretty much.
And are the photographs a fair representation of what it was like?
Yes, sir.
One more question, Trooper Wade. The area you searched on January 1st, is that very different than the area you found the evidence on January 2nd?
Yes and no. No, in the regard to it was still the divide. We were still searching. We searched the entire divide with SRT. The secondary search we performed was towards kind of like the bottom of the ravine, semi-close to where the truck was found. We recovered the evidence the next morning in a different area. So
About how far away from that area?
I would say 200 yards, approximately 200, 300 yards.
I don't have any other questions.
When you talk about this first search, was that late in the evening? For that time of year, I mean,
yeah, it gets dark early, and it got dark early that night. Of course, it was in January, but I reference all this because I was due out for evening shift, which is 4 o'clock. I worked 4 p.m. to midnight. So as soon as I came out at 4 p.m., I responded to the interstate area. It was maybe 20 or 30 minutes. They said they found the truck. So I responded to the eastbound side of the divide. So in 20 or 30 minutes after coming out to work, it may have been an hour after they discovered the red truck that they took Edward Campbell into custody. And it was probably another hour after that that we went into the woods with SRT for the first search for any other people. Yes, sir.
Trooper Ellison said it was 2055, which is, what's that? 8:55, is that right?
2055? Yes, sir.
So that's near 9 o'clock at night.
Yes, sir.
Would that be, you had to use lights to search, is that right?
Yes, sir. Along with assistance from the helicopter and all that.
So, and it sounds like in this terrain it changes up and down as you go throughout, is that right?
Yes, sir. Throughout that stretch of the divide, I think the whole divide from beginning to end is a 5-mile stretch of road.
Right.
And where the truck come to rest in the vial was at the bottom. So the area that we searched was essentially one section of hill. So we started from the bottom of the ravine and up over the top and down over the other side. You know, and we covered that whole area, you know, from the eastbound side to the westbound side, spread out.
So, back to the question, it goes up and down in that area, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It does.
And some parts are clear and some parts are brush.
Yes, sir.
And to walk around in that, you have to go up and down and through brush, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And where you recovered the stuff was about 60 yards from the eastbound lane, is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Nothing further.
We don't have any other questions for Trooper Wade.
Thanks, sir. You stand there.
Your Honor, we'd ask Trooper Wade be excused from this case.
Any objection?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, that's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch and morning recess at this point. During this time, it is your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. Duty not to talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. Your further duty not to talk to anyone else, to allow anyone else to talk with you, to say anything in your presence about this case. If anyone provides you with any information about this case at all in any form, you let the sheriff know about it when you come in. Don't do any individual research or investigation on your own about any issue touching on this trial. Stay away from smartphones. And do not form or express any opinion about this case during this time. With that, while everyone else will remain seated, I will excuse the 18 of you and ask that you return and assemble in the jury room at 20 minutes to the hour of 12. With that, you are excused. Right now, state.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. The state will call Captain W.A. Pendleton.
I do.
Will you please state your name for the court?
Captain W.A. Pendleton,
How are you employed, sir?
West Virginia State Police.
How long have you been employed with the West Virginia State Police?
In my 19th year,
How long have you been in law enforcement?
approximately 21 years.
Where were you before you came to the West Virginia State Police?
I worked for Marlington Police Department, small town in West Virginia.
And what is your position now with the West Virginia State Police?
Currently, I'm head of the governor's security.
And on January the 1st of 2015, what was your rank and position with the West Virginia State Police?
Sergeant, detachment commander of the Lewisburg Detachment in Greenbrier County, West Virginia.
And as the Sergeant Detachment Commander of the Lewisburg Detachment, what were your job duties?
Job duties is to run a state police office, which entails scheduling guys, overseeing investigations, continuing on my doing my own investigations, general supervisor office, evidence room, anything associated with that office that runs through it. It's my responsibility.
And were you so on duty on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes.
And on that day, did you respond to I-64 westbound in response to 2 officers that had been shot?
Yes.
Why did you respond there?
2 officers had been shot. Everybody that could hear the radio traffic's coming at that point.
What time was this?
It was just shortly after 4 p.m.
Where were you when you heard the radio traffic?
I was at my office, and I was on the phone with who was my first sergeant Bowles at the time. He's now Lieutenant Colonel Bowles. I was talking to him on the phone. I believe he was at the house, and the radio traffic came on, and I told him what was going on and hung up, and I was out the door. And
from the Lewisburg Detachment office to this area of I-64 West, about how long did it take you to get there?
2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like in that round.
And did you in fact respond on the scene?
Yes, I did.
And what happened, or what did you find when you got there?
As soon as we got there, obviously it's very confusing, just to say the least. You got 2 officers shot. Ambulances were rolling in at that point. I seen the suspect, which was Edward Campbell. He was, at that point, I think he was still over the hill or right in that proximity. They were still tending to him. Just the scene at that point.
And when you responded, what did you do?
At that point, it's a call like that, you're going to get people coming from everywhere. So you start to assume, you evaluate the situation, you evaluate what is going on. And a lot of times people will look at us for direction and what to do. And I kind of assumed that role at that point in time because I knew we were going to start getting a lot of people coming, wanting to help, but they got to have direction on what we need. You just can't throw it all at once. And I think that's what I started to do at that point.
So for lack of a better term, were you sort of running point from at that particular time?
Yes.
You were supervising and coordinating what was going on out there?
Yes, pretty much immediately I knew that although he probably wouldn't want it, he ends up with it. First Sergeant Bowles at the time, he was the district commander, usually ends up doing the investigation or the investigating officers for all officer-involved shootings within the area, whatever state police it is or thing. So I knew he would be that, and then I knew what my role or responsibility would be at that point to help him but kind of run the scene. And I knew we was going to have a mess, just didn't know what it was going to entail.
So at that point, when you arrived on scene and sort of assessed things, is that the time when it was decided that the West Virginia State Police would take over the investigation of this?
I don't know that it's decided. At that point, it was assumed. We usually do those. Lewisburg Police Department's a small, I think it's a 12 or 13 man department. 2 of their guys just got shot. Outside agency, which is us, we're large, large for West Virginia in a sense. We normally would do it, and I think it was assumed. It wasn't assigned at that point.
When you arrived on scene, you said that Edward Campbell was still there. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you have any interaction with Edward Campbell on the scene?
I did.
And what was that?
We were trying to determine who just left, who fled the scene, and who he was. He had obviously been shot. Wasn't great, he wasn't screaming in pain or anything by that nature, but he wasn't very happy, obviously. He would not give us any good information. We could not get anything of relevance out of him.
At some point, when you were on scene there, in those first several minutes that you were on scene, did you retrieve a wallet, or did somebody give you a wallet that was purported to be from the person of Edward Campbell?
Yes, I did receive a wallet at that point.
Do you remember, did you take that wallet from Mr. Campbell?
I did not. It was handed to me on scene.
Was that near the proximity of where you were to Mr. Campbell?
Yes. If you've seen the trooper that come across in the video, I was the one wearing a toboggan, and at some point during that, somebody handed me the wallet, and I don't remember if it was EMS or law enforcement. Somebody handed me a wallet that was on the person of Mr. Campbell.
Mr. which Campbell?
Edward Campbell.
And did you collect that wallet?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach, Your Honor? Captain Pendleton, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 115. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's a brown paper bag. It's got my handwriting on it.
And what does it say?
It's at the top of it with the evidence seal. It says Sergeant W.A. Pendleton. Brown wallet belonging, and notations on it. Brown wallet belonging to Jerome Faulkner, recovered from Edward Campbell, 11/15, when he was taken into custody.
So it could have been that when he was taken into custody, was that by EMS or by law enforcement, or you're not sure?
Simultaneous. At that point, he's in custody, but he's going by ambulance.
And will you open that, sir?
Yes.
And I will mark the contents of this as State's Exhibit 115A. What are the contents of State's Exhibit 115?
It's a wallet, brown wallet, cash in it. Looks like cards, credit cards, belonging, bank cards, Jerome Faulkner.
Specifically, the first card on the right side, if you would just describe that for the jury.
It is a Visa Signature BB&T card issued to Jerome T. Faulkner.
And that was found in the wallet?
Yes.
And is this how the wallet, how you received it from the person of Edward Campbell on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes, but I believe there was an ID.
Do you see the ID in the wallet?
Yes, I do.
And who does that belong to?
Jerome Taylor Faulkner.
Is there an address on there?
8067 North NC Highway 96, Oxford, North Carolina.
Does that appear to be a driver's license?
Yes.
And so as you see the ID and the other contents, is that the same condition that it was when you retrieved it on January the 1st of 2015?
To my recollection, yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I would move to admit State's Exhibits 115 and 115A into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, sir.
Motion light.
After Edward Campbell was taken into custody, and you received this information, you received this wallet that had Jerome Faulkner's ID in it. Did you make any, what did you, when you looked at the ID and you looked at Mr. Campbell, what sort of things, if anything, were you thinking?
Well, at that point in time, shortly after I arrived, this is all kind of happening all together, if you can imagine. Lieutenant Colonel Bowles shows up on scene as we're trying to, he's on the ground, I believe at that point, we're looking at this ID and we're going, that's not him. You know, that was taken off him, so we know that's not who we're looking at.
Did you know about any bodies that had been found in the other car that had left?
No, not at that point, not at all.
Did you do anything with the information, the identification information of Jerome Faulkner that you found in the wallet?
At some point we ran it, and it wasn't shortly after that. It was either myself or Lieutenant Colonel Bowles, both of us were right there, so it was ran through our information, either Greenbrier County 911 Center or the West Virginia State Police Telecommunications. Both do the same thing. Check it through NCIC.
And when you say ran it, what were you looking for?
To see if there was any information about this Mr. Faulkner at that point. We didn't. You know, if something comes back, a lot of times, you know, if I run someone's driver's license, it'll come back as, 3 points on their driver's license or there's no problems. When we ran that, we're looking for something to come back at that point, I think.
And at that particular time, did you find anything that came back on Jerome Faulkner?
Not at that very moment.
Did you at some point?
Yes, there was a delayed hit, I believe, that come back to say that that Mr. Faulkner was a missing person.
When you say delayed hit, explain to the jury what you mean by that.
Like if I run someone's driver's license, like right now, it's again just like a computer networking system, just run by the the FBI. It will pick up that I just ran that an hour later. If someone goes to enter that person into NCIC as missing, like it will pick up that this license just got ran, and it will forward that information back to us, and that kind of started the missing person at that point for us.
So if you entered this information at 4 o'clock, and let's say Granville County Sheriff's Office had entered Jerome Faulkner as missing an hour or so later, would you get information? Is that what the delayed hit would have been? Yes. You would get information subsequent to someone else entering the information into NCIC?
Right. Both of us should have got it at that point. We would get it, and the law enforcement here in Oxford County should get it, because they're saying, hey, someone in West Virginia just ran his ID. You probably need to contact them.
After you entered the information into NCIC, what did you do next?
What we did next was we started to review. I had to assign somebody to go with the ambulance to transport Edward Campbell, because he was going to go to the hospital for his injuries of being shot. So we definitely want to have law enforcement go with him and any statements that he may or may not have made in the transportation of him. We're still trying to determine who the person was that ran from the scene, which in the stop, because they took off in a separate vehicle that wasn't being stopped, which was the truck. So we're running that. Again, like I told you, radio traffic, it covers the whole thing. So we have a whole contingency of law enforcement coming from different counties, state police, sheriff's office. What they're going to be coming, they would be coming east on I-64. So what we tried to do, we didn't know where the truck had went to. Coordinated effort of as these guys coming in, rather than just rushing to the scene, you get there and then go back out. We wanted to stage them as they come across, so we filled up each exit and start checking the exits for each ramp, just a coordination of law enforcement effort to better utilize our resources.
Is this the one that was used, or that you took the sample from Edward Campbell on January the 1st of 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you know that?
Because in my terrible handwriting, it says completed by Pendleton on at 21:40 hours. Edward Campbell, 1/1 of 15.
And did you seal it with anything?
Yes, I sealed it with a red or a yellow tag on it and dated it.
And it appears that the yellow tag has been broken.
Right.
And why is that, if you know?
That would when it arrives at the crime lab, that would be sealed, and they can document the fact that this container kit came to them in a sealed condition, meaning that that's my handwriting on it. And if there was a problem, that they would have noted it in their report when it comes back after testing.
So did this exact box go to the crime lab in West Virginia?
Yes, ma'am. As far as I know, it did.
Your Honor, the state would move to admit State's Exhibit 116 into evidence.
Jackson?
No, sir.
Wow.
I don't have any other questions.
Vincent? No.
Trooper Pendleton, did you review the video of the crime scene prior to doing what you just described?
Review the video from the in-car camera.
I'm sorry, that's not a very good question. Did you review the video from the in-car camera prior to starting sort of your job or your participation?
To the best we could, very quickly. Didn't watch it like you did at full length right now, but I was trying to determine the vehicles that we were looking for. I've seen the shooting, obviously, happen in the beginning and the beginning of the stop because we wanted to know the type of vehicles we were going to be looking for.
And you mentioned that that video does not show where Edward Campbell was when the shooting started, does it?
It shows him coming down the left side or driver's side of the car, and then I believe he goes back up the right side running away.
When the shooting starts?
Yes.
And so that was the only information you had about where he was at the time of the shooting. Is that correct?
Yes, that he took the truck and left.
That's
the
right.
scene.
And it was your understanding that he did not shoot back. Is that right? He did not shoot.
No, there was no information like that.
Now, you mentioned that you saw him later that night when he took the officers back out there to search for property. Is that right?
Yes.
So you were part of that detail? Or that group of officers?
I wasn't part of going with him for the search. My role in how I did the GSR kit was I was still supervising, in essence, the crime scene of where the shooting occurred, making sure that the crime scene where the truck was and the Faulkner's bodies were recovered from, to make sure that that's all secured and done. And when he got back up on scene, this is where little things can mishap. He should have probably already had the gunshot residue kit done while he was off scene before he came back. So I started inquiring about that, figured out that it hadn't happened, and that's why I did it.
So you did it at that point?
Yes, I wanted to make sure that it's happened. that base was covered in our investigation.
Right, and of course, he had no input or say on when that test was taken, right?
No, I mean, that was pretty much going to happen. I felt like, it's lost evidence, exigent circumstances. I didn't have time to go get a search warrant to try and do this test on him. It was, he didn't fight it or argue, to my recollection, or say no. He was extremely cooperative with it, but that's where the test was done, on the side of the road.
Right. Now, I want to come back to that in just a moment, but Ms. Capps asked you, did you have contact with Edward Campbell that afternoon? And you tried to get information from him that afternoon at the scene, is that right?
Briefly.
You tried to get his name, is that
Yes.
right? And he wouldn't give you his name?
No.
He didn't give you any information that was helpful?
He didn't do nothing for us,
Right.
no.
And at some point, you did have contact with him again, though, didn't you?
Yes.
And that was during the transport of him from the jail back to, from his, the jail to court, is that right?
Objection.
Well, he didn't answer that.
Yes. Yes, sir.
And during that transport, did you, was it your objective to get information from him?
Objection.
He didn't answer that.
Two objectives on that I had. Normally, we do not go get them from the jail and transport to court, but due to the severity of this type of case and the distance that he was coming from, myself and Lieutenant Deeds, decided to go to Charleston and pick him up. And yes, if he wanted to talk, we would have talked.
And not only if he wanted to talk, but you were going to make sure that you had that information recorded, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so you did record your conversations with Mr. Ed Campbell. Did you record the conversations with Ed Campbell on the transport from the Charleston jail all the way to the courthouse?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what date was it that you transported him from the Charleston jail to the courthouse?
It was several days afterwards. I'm sorry, I don't have that information in front of me, the actual date.
Well, did you, have you seen a transcript of that recording at any time?
Yes, I believe I have read through the transcript, but I've listened to it, and I can't say that I've read it verbatim, no, sir.
Did you listen to the transcript of the recording?
I have listened to the recording, yes.
And was it your objective to sort of let Mr. Campbell talk if he wanted to, or was it more like an interrogation where you ask him specific questions?
I think the objective was to let him talk, but again, you're gonna, anybody's gonna ask questions. At that point, it wasn't a formal interrogation, as I would call it, where you come in and sit down and I've done hundreds of those through my career, but this was more of an opportunity. If this guy wanted to talk, we were gonna listen, and if questions came up, we were gonna ask.
Excuse me just a second. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor? Yes. Let me ask you first, Trooper Pendleton, would a chronology that Trooper Bowles prepared about the date of that particular hearing we're talking about, would that refresh your recollection as to the date?
Yes.
If I showed that to you?
Oh, yes, sir.
And I've got this marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 3, just for purposes of identification, and refresh Trooper Pendleton's memory. That's the entry.
Yes, on January 14th, 2015.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
And now, Trooper Pendleton, you mentioned that you transported Edward Campbell from the jail to court in, I think it was in Lewisburg, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And how long a drive is that?
It's roughly 2 hours, a little bit better than 2 hours from Charleston to Lewisburg.
Who was with you during that trip?
Lieutenant Deeds at the time. He's Major Deeds now.
And so that was January 14th of 2015, is that right?
That does sound correct, yes.
And describe for me, if you will, I mean, how long have you been working in law enforcement again?
About 21 years total.
And I assume, is it fair to say in law enforcement you meet all kinds of personalities and all kinds of people?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And some people, is it fair to say, are very kind and decent to you?
Absolutely, yes.
And some people are rough around the edges, is it fair to say that?
Yes, sir.
And when you picked Mr. Campbell up that day, had you had any contact with him other than that meeting at the scene of the shooting?
To my recollection, no. I don't ever remember seeing Edward Campbell again because I think he went from Lewisburg to the Charleston Hospital and then was transported to the regional jail upon his release, and I can't recall another time.
And what was his general demeanor when you got him in the car to go to court?
talkative but yet distant.
Did he
Just a
start talking from the get-go?
pretty,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this line of questioning.
Like, I'm going to excuse you to the jury for just a few moments while they don't discuss this case among yourselves, and it should be formal, expressing your opinion about this case during this time. Respectfully speak to the jury. Right, you reflect all the jury's asking for, and you may continue.
It's Trooper Pendleton, right? Trooper Pendleton?
that's fine.
Okay, is that fine? Okay. I know you've got some other rank now, and I apologize.
You're fine.
You talked to Edward Campbell that day during that trip, is that right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And was it your objective to get as much information from Edward Campbell as possible about the shooting in West Virginia?
I think that'd be a fair assessment to a certain degree.
Was it one of your objectives to get as much information as you could about the bodies that were in the back of that red truck?
I mean, it was an investigation. Like I told you, we had two objectives that day, and we are investigators. That's what our job is, so yes.
So both.
Yes.
But any information certainly that you could find out about the murders of Mr. and Mrs. Faulkner, you wanted that information as well, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And is it fair to say that any information that he gave you, you wanted recorded and preserved for the investigators in North Carolina? Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
And particularly, you were looking for things that he would say that might incriminate him in that situation. Is that right?
Him or Eric, both.
Correct. And of course, at that time, you knew that you had found Jerome Faulkner's wallet on him at the scene. Is that right?
Are you asking? I'm a little bit confused what you're asking right there. Is it?
Let me rephrase it. On the 14th of January,
We knew who we found.
2015, when you had Mr. Campbell in the car, you already knew that he had Jerome Faulkner's wallet in his pocket when he was arrested.
Yes.
And you knew that the person in the back of the red truck had been, one of them had been identified, one of the people in the back had been identified as Jerome Faulkner. Is that right?
Preliminary. I don't remember if I knew whether they had officially been identified. That, you know, it's a process, but it was a pretty good presumption at that point.
Well, it was certainly enough information that you believed that the person in the back of the truck was Jerome Faulkner.
Yes.
And so you wanted to investigate and learn as much as you could about what happened to lead to Mr. Faulkner being in the back of that truck. Isn't that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Campbell, he gave you a fair number of statements that would have tended to incriminate him. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
He talked to you about his arrest in Texas, didn't he?
I think he did, but I don't recall the full. I recall I didn't review that. I have not reviewed the transcript for a long time. I did not suspect that we were going to get into that today. But in generalization, we talked about a lot of things that day.
You didn't expect to have to talk about that today?
Not a statement, no.
Okay. Do we have a copy of that transcript, please? 4, I think. You got the list. Sure, that's right. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Pendleton, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 4 for purposes of this, what we call voir dire hearing. See if you recognize that transcript.
Yes, I do.
Is the first page of your transcript, is the bait stamp at the bottom 5954?
Yes, 005954.
005954. Does that appear to be a transcript of the recorded statements, that the statements that were recorded between Charleston and the Lewisburg courthouse on the 14th of January 2015?
Yes.
Would that transcript help to remind you of specific statements Mr. Campbell gave you that day?
It would. I mean, I could use it if you were looking for something specific.
If I ask you a specific question about something he said, you looked at the transcript, would it refresh your recollection possibly?
Yeah, it may take some time to find it in it because he, like I said, he rambled a lot.
Right. He talked a whole lot between Charleston and the Lewisburg courthouse. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And it looks like most of the time your or Trooper Deed's statements are very short. Oh, okay, sure, things like that. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And now I was asking you specifically about his interactions with his wife. And on the first page, did he say, yeah, they drugged me out, one on each foot, and she put my Glock underneath my pillow. It's like, thanks a lot, thanks a lot. 5954, sort of toward the middle.
Yeah, I see it. But that come on at the very beginning.
Is it fair to say you weren't necessarily, of all the things you were investigating, you weren't investigating what was going on in Texas, is that right?
I won't say we weren't investigating what was going on. We were trying to get a clear picture of what we had, I guess.
And did you ask him anything about his wife in Texas, or did he just bring that up?
I can't recall. I would have to listen to and read the whole transcript and study it. I don't remember exactly what was said and done. I can give you a generalized context of what our entire conversation was about and what probably the objective was.
Okay. Well, look at, if you would, go to 5956.
Okay.
And at the top, does it say about 8 years ago, I lost my license?
Yes.
And was that related to his nursing license? Do you remember that?
To my recollection, yes, he talked about that.
And in not the next statement, but the next statement, Does he talk more about his relationship with his wife? And,
Yes.
And doing drugs from nursing?
Yes.
And he said he got caught with some substance, hospital drugs, and then went to jail.
Said he spent 3 years.
And on page 59, 57,
Yes.
you ask him what kind of kid's Eric. Sort of toward the middle of the page, where it says Pendleton.
That. What type of kids, Eric? Yes.
And he says, "Oh, good-hearted soul, I was raised on the streets." Is that part of what he said?
Yes. You want me to read it, or?
I'm just verifying that's what Mr. Campbell said right now, but we can go into that in a minute. And then it was Trooper Deeds who said, "That's Eric," and then he said, "Very naive, yes, unfortunately." Is that what he said?
Yes.
Now, on the next page, 59, 58, toward the middle of the page, after Trooper Deeds says, "Yeah, it is, yeah," does Mr. Campbell say, "Because actually I'm a violent person, never mind, I take that back. I've never been a violent person, but you know, the state of Texas kind of pushed me there like I was going camping up there by Huntsville. That son of a bitch, the Huntsville anti-escape team started chasing me like son of a bitch."
Right.
Did he say that?
That's what the transcript says.
And then on 5959, toward the bottom, it says, "Why did Eric," or Edward, the curiosity really kills me, "why did Eric pick that house in North Carolina?" Did he say he didn't pick a house in North Carolina?
Yes.
And you said, "I thought he was involved in picking the house."
Right.
And did he say, "No, sir"?
Yes.
And then on the next page, well, down at the very bottom, did Trooper Deed say, "Well, so anyway, I mean, you know, the stuff that pretty much you had the Suburban, right, picked Eric up. Eric just wanted to hang out with you"? And on the next page, 5960, does he say he wanted to make sure I was okay?
He did.
And because he saw me emotionally distraught because my oldest boy was, "Don't go." Did he say that?
Yes.
And then look at page 5964.
Yes, sir.
Does Trooper Deed say, "Sure, well, Eric has been very, very cooperative"? And does Mr. Campbell say he's a cooperative child?
Yes.
And on page 5969,
59. I'm sorry.
5969, 005969.
Got it.
You're talking to him a little bit about his history, or Trooper Deeds is. And then I went into management, probably last 10 years I did administration. Did he say it's good to be king?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we don't have lines here, Trooper. I could.
I got you. I mean, if you're getting at what, I understand what you're saying, but you have to listen. I mean, I like the transcript to refer to it, but you have to listen to how he puts things in context. I think gives you a better.
Sure, and I understand.
I mean, it's
that.
hard for me to pick out what you're doing and look for the answers that you're looking.
Well, I'm just asking you, did he say it? That's all I'm
okay.
asking. I'm not asking you to explain it or put it into context. Did he say that?
Yes.
Okay. And did he say, you know, drugs? And yeah, and Trooper Deed said, yeah. And then did Mr. Campbell say, especially when you have the keys to the hospital, you know? Down at the bottom of that same page.
Yes, he did.
And at the top of page 5971, does it say, yeah, I waited till my upper 40s before I started getting in trouble. Now, because Eric knew I was on jumping bail, is he in trouble for that? Is that aiding and abetting if he's just going with me for my psychological benefit? Because he didn't supply any of me. He didn't supply anything. He didn't aid anything except for my, and then you say Eric's problems. That's the least of Eric's problems. Eric's problems are in North Carolina. Is that right?
Yes.
And down at the bottom, page 5971, Mr. Campbell said, because he didn't do anything. And Trooper Deed says, right. And did Mr. Campbell say, and I think, you know, I think there's proof for that too. I know there is, because there aren't any fingerprints on anything that had to do with those deaths. Those people I killed.
Yes.
And on page 5972, down at the bottom, at the very last where it says Pendleton is the only thing that could help you to help Eric, because I know we know what Eric's done based upon what he told us is truthfulness. Did you say that?
Yes.
On 5976, down toward the middle, and I think it's...
You said 76?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's right after Trooper Deed says, and maybe not, I mean. Does Mr. Campbell say he didn't kill anybody, he didn't shoot anybody, that's why he wouldn't even ram that car without saying he was absolutely nonviolent, and that, right? And Trooper Deed says, right, and Mr. Campbell goes on, he didn't do anything on me. I would have taken that car, that Suburban, and rammed it into the cop's car. Did he say that?
Yes.
Trooper Deed says, right. And Mr. Campbell says, hit reverse, get it hooked up on the hitch and take it off with it because it gets rammed on the hitch more likely. Worst case scenario, you know, the car's not going to drive after the Suburban because it's going to be damaged. Did he say that?
Yes, sir.
And did he say, that would have been my first action?
Yes, sir.
And his first action was to pull over. Did he say that? That's
yes.
That's the last line, yes. Page 5977. At the top, where it says Deed's right, under that, did Mr. Campbell say, and get out when instructed to get out?
Yes, sir.
And where Trooper Deed says right, that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
And did you say Eric salvageable? There's no doubt about it. But
yes, I did.
Then on page 5989,
Got it.
down toward just below the halfway point of the page, it says Pendleton. Yeah, during the traffic stop, why not just go on up the road and wait? And did Mr. Campbell say, Eric kept speeding up and following me?
Yes.
And you said, all right. He was scared. You said, yeah. He didn't know what to do. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
That's what Mr. Campbell said.
Correct.
Now, on page 5991, did you actually ask Mr. Campbell, Edward, I'm just going to ask you because it's driving, it's just that's my human nature. You're never going to cause, I don't know what he said, why put them in the truck, man? Did Mr. Campbell say, I'm an artist also?
Yes.
Masks, like dental form. Did he say that?
Yes, sir.
And you said, yeah. And did Mr. Campbell say, take his face, make a latex mask, put it on my head? Did Mr. Campbell say that?
Yes.
And you asked, so you were going to make a latex mask of him? And did Mr. Campbell say, actually, I'm going to, my mouth's getting a little dry. I'm going to, okay, and you say, all right, fine. Or Trooper D says, all right, fine. And does Mr. Campbell say, nah, I didn't want the bones and the found in the fire, then they would wonder why the car was gone, you know? Is that what he said? I'm sorry, this is page 5991.
Yes, sir.
And on page 5992, does Mr. Campbell say, I was distraught, I was mentally out there, you know, otherwise, why else would a person do something like that, you know?
Yes, he said that.
And later down in that same page, he says, I was just trying to get out of the country, is that right?
Yes.
And 2 lines down, does he say, dispose of them after I made my nest, and you guys will get all the information you want? Is that what Mr. Campbell said?
That's what he said, sir. According to the transcript.
Well, do you remember him saying that?
I remember, but a lot of this in context. I'm just saying it was better served to me if listen to the audio recording. You hear it and it takes you back. Reading it's a little bit.
It would help your memory to hear the audio, but do you have any doubt that this transcript?
I have no doubt that this transcript is spot on.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
So for these purposes, I'll just ask you a few more questions, Trooper Pendleton. And on page 5994, sort of below the halfway point toward the bottom, did you say to him, my pure picture of you is nothing but Satan himself is the best way I put it? And did Mr. Campbell say, no, I understand.
Yes, sir.
That's not a statement you make every day, I assume.
Unfortunately, it's not.
And on page 6,000, down toward the bottom, you ask him, had he talked to any of them, meaning his family?
Right.
And did Mr. Campbell respond, excuse me, I talked to my oldest son yesterday or 2 days ago, and your response was, what'd he have to say? He was pissed off about Eric involved in my shit. Is that what he said?
Yes, sir.
And then on page 6001, down toward the bottom where it says Trooper Deeds. I'm sorry, Trooper Pendleton, right under 80 Beckley will be 10-8 back on the 6001, I'm sorry. Did you ask him why make a mask? I got to ask that why. And Trooper Deed says change your identity maybe. And did Mr. Campbell say steal the identity?
Yes, sir.
And all right. And then did he say in a very professional way?
Yes, sir.
And you asked, that's why I keep their IDs? And did Mr. Campbell say correct?
Yes, sir. Next page. Yes, sir.
And yes, I'm sorry, on the next page. And did you ask him that's why you kept their ID on you?
Yes,
And
sir.
did Mr. Campbell say that's why I had all the bank information, everything?
Yes, sir.
And later down on that page 6002, did Mr. Campbell say, actually all I wanted was a couple $1,000s from him? The guy, your fucking wife worth $2,000?
Where are you at on that?
6002, it's line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Yeah, I see it. I'm sorry.
Did Mr. Campbell say that?
Yes, sir.
And Trooper Deed said right.
Yes.
And did Mr. Campbell say, he said, of course she is, but I'm not giving you any money. I was like, you dumb motherfucker, and I would have just taken their money, tied them up, and walked the fuck out of there. Is that what Mr. Campbell said?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Deed said right. And did Mr. Campbell then say, but it just went too far. Actually, she grabbed the tip of the crossbow and it went off. And then it was like, fuck anyway, I better. Is that what he told you?
Yes, sir.
And now on page 6008, did you ask at the top, what would you have done with him to make that mask to fit you? And did he say, first you take, I'll explain the procedure. First, any hair, first I take pictures of the hairline. You said, right. Did he say, and take pictures, take good facial pictures, then I would Vaseline all the hair, and then I use alginate, which, did he say that?
Yes.
And did you say, what's alginate?
Deeds did.
Oh, Deeds did, I'm sorry. And did he say for dental impressions?
Yes, sir.
And then does he describe, then I'd alginate his face and the body part I wanted to copy, and then you have a quick copy. Then you can do another one of your own face so it's a perfectly fit. And did you say right, or Deed said right?
Yes, sir.
So you have your face inside the mask and his face outside the mask, so the way you can get a custom, you get expression. So when you smile, the smile comes up on the alginate, and not the alginate, or the other one is made out of latex. Did he say that?
Yes, sir.
And then you use like a glue to glue like the Halloween costumes.
Yes, sir.
At the very bottom, does he say, I have a lot of skills, I'm a seeker, and I found out how to do things, and I keep doing them until I get them right. I do a lot of railroad modeling. Did he say that?
Yes, sir. According to the transcript.
And on the next page, 6009, did he tell you he used to be a Navy diver? Navy diver, a commercial oil rig?
Yes, sir.
And on page 6010, Trooper Deeds asked about Eric again. Does he say, yeah, I'd say, well, Eric gives me the impression he's intelligent too, you know what I'm saying, and he's not, doesn't have a whole lot of life experiences. And does Mr. Campbell say, no, he doesn't. He's naive, like I say.
Yes, sir.
And did you ask him if he ever killed anybody before?
Yes, I did.
Did you say no? Thought about the wife once or twice.
But
No, I did. Seriously, I couldn't take her away from the kids.
right, he did.
Page 6011. Down at the bottom, as Trooper Deeds asked, yeah, you got the guns off the Faulkners?
Yes, sir. The question before, though, when you read that not putting it in context, that was a little bit. I think if I remember right, that was a little bit more of a lighthearted moment. Not that you take away from it. When you listen to it, he wasn't. He was being smart alecky when he was saying, "I thought about the wife once or twice." If you listen to it, the transcript, I don't think gives it justice. You know,
Yeah, and I'm not, I'm just trying to see if he asked you these questions for purposes of the record right
Okay.
now. I mean, we may talk about that later, but,
yes, sir.
but on page 6011, down toward the bottom, did Trooper Deeds say, yeah, you got the guns off the Faulkners? I think it's the fifth name from the top, from the bottom.
Yes, you got the guns off the Faulkners.
And did Mr. Campbell say, correct, they, in fact, both of them pointed guns at me. Ha, 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 ha.
Yes.
And then did he say, but it's pretty easy to disarm a person if they don't know how to handle a gun?
Correct.
Is that what he said?
Yes, sir.
And then on page 6012, third from the top, did he say, they were an old couple enjoying the last of their lives, and I took it from them, that's all?
Yes, unfortunately, that's what he said.
Now, on page 6024, apparently there'd been discussion about he and his wife, and in the third line down it says Campbell, or the third name down is Campbell,
Yes, sir.
and at the bottom of that paragraph it says, I don't want to talk about her no more. Trooper Deeds says, no, you don't. And does Mr. Campbell say, because that really gets me very violent?
Yes.
For purposes of this hearing, Your Honor, that would be all my questions.
Trooper Pendleton, you didn't Mirandize Mr. Campbell before you asked me these questions, did you?
No.
Did you hear Lieutenant Deeds Mirandize him before you asked me these questions?
No, we did it in kind of, you have a right to, we didn't do it formally, no.
But several times throughout this transcript, he says, I need to talk to an attorney, I should probably talk to an attorney, I need to talk to my attorney, and y'all asked some more questions,
Correct.
and he answered them.
Yes, he did.
But he asked for an attorney or said, I need to talk to my attorney about that several times throughout this, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And if I could turn your attention to page 5972,
Oh, 72, I'm sorry.
5972, Bates Stand
Got it.
And actually, I'm sorry, if you will turn one page before that, 5971.
Got it.
At the bottom, you see Campbell, I think there's proof for that too. I know there is, because there ain't any fingerprints on anything that had to do with those deaths, those people I killed.
Correct.
And then if you come over to 5972, he says his fingerprints are nowhere.
Right.
He says, and there's nothing that fucking truck. And then he says when he jumped in that fucking truck, because I even put the blue buckets, he moved the blue buckets. His fingerprints might be on the blue buckets, but that's on the outside.
Right.
And then he said, but there's nothing on the, and the deed says, well, now he told me he helped load the bodies. I mean, you know, so, so just, I don't want you to damn yourself up here either. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then Edward Campbell says, thank you, I appreciate you.
Yes.
And on page 6012, so 6012.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
You see where Mr. Campbell says, yep, so I'll have a chance to talk with the media? You say, yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell says, Deed says I'm sure they'll be there. And then do you see Mr. Campbell say, yes, sir, recommendations on how I can manipulate one of them to get an attorney for my son?
Yes.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
No, sir, not as to this. Here, Your Honor. Well, Your Honor, there are a number of, obviously Mr. Campbell's unavailable. And there are a number of statements in there that are against his interest, and that we believe, first of all, we believe much of this recording is relevant. It's relevant not only to show the different roles potentially show the different roles of of Mr. Campbell, who we've conceded was at the scene, and of course drove the red truck away. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But it does go to show it's a statement against his interest. He knew at the time that he was in trouble. He said several times, I might need an attorney, or I need an attorney. So clearly he's aware that what he's saying can incriminate. Many of these statements are relevant to the roles of the offenses, how it actually happened, how it actually occurred. And just to go also to show the type of depravity that Mr. Edward Campbell, just the kind of person he was. I mean, the state's theory is that he couldn't have done these acts inside that house by himself. And of course, we believe otherwise. And we think that a lot of what he says goes to show that and goes to support the relevant evidence, some of which we've already seen through the video. I mean, for a man to walk up on 3 officers without them even knowing that he's got a gun, and then immediately start firing before they know what's happening, and only one of them able to shoot back, says a lot. And I think this goes to reinforce that. He talks specifically about things that happened inside that house. That's relevant evidence. He talks specifically about what his intentions were in taking the body. It's not a rational thing to kill people, but certainly not a rational thing to then take the bodies with you. And he explains why he was doing that. And that's relevant evidence to this case, Your Honor. It goes to and we shouldn't be limited on our cross-examination at this point, just because the state put him on as a crime scene investigator. I mean, this is relevant to the case. The state has already put on evidence about the trip. They've already introduced receipts. The opening statement was that they stopped along the way to buy things. They introduced some of those receipts to show that. We contend that Eric Campbell and Edward Campbell had two very different objectives on this trip. And he says that in here. He says that Eric Campbell did not participate in the house. That's our contention. He says he took the bodies to make a mask or a mold and steal their identity. That's our contention as well. So we would contend that that this is, certainly it's relevant evidence, it's relevant at this point, and it gets around it's 804 specifically, it's 804 B 3B is the exception to the hearsay. Of course, Mr. Edward Campbell is not here, so he's no right of confrontation, nor does the state. And so, no constitutional right of confrontation, I should say. So we believe it's relevant evidence. It should be admitted at this point. We should be able to ask him questions, but I'm not saying I'll ask all of those questions, but I would intend to ask him questions about things Mr. Campbell said on that trip.
Your Honor, it is the state's contention that none of these statements should be allowed into evidence, that they are not permissible under the hearsay exception of statements against interest, nor are they admissible under the residual hearsay exception to hearsay. If I may speak first to the statements against interest, which would be the hearsay, the 804B3. If I may approach, Your Honor, with State of North Carolina versus Shawbury, CHOUDHRY, which is from the North Carolina Court of Appeals, 206 NC App 418, which, Your Honor, the state would contend is directly on point with this fact pattern. If I may approach with that case, Your Honor, it is a Durham kind of case, which I'm sure Your Honor is familiar with. In that particular case, Your Honor, the statement of a co-defendant who absconded and I believe was found to be unavailable at the time, which there's no question that Edward Campbell is unavailable. He made statements where he waived his Miranda rights and made statements to law enforcement officers in that particular case. He absconded prior to trial, and the court ruled that those statements were not admissible under a hearsay exception where there were no corroborating evidence to support its admission, where the state did not offer any portion of the co-defendant's statement into evidence. It did not open the door to the admission of the statement, and the defendant, and so the statements were not admissible. Under the Dewberry ruling, Your Honor, which is State of North Carolina versus Dewberry, 166 NC Act 177, there's a two-part test, if I may approach. There's a two-part test that the court has to conduct in this particular set of circumstances. The first, of course, is it a statement that's against interest? I don't believe we can argue against that. The statements that Edward were making, I believe the court would be able to find were against his interests. Some of the statements that he said would be. But the second is that the determination whether the trustworthiness of the statement is indicated by corroborating circumstance is a preliminary matter to be decided by the trial judge, and it has to be evidence of some independent, non-hearsay indication of trustworthiness. Your Honor, my argument to you is there is no non-hearsay, independent evidence that will corroborate the things that Edward Campbell is saying. The state believes that the medical examiner's testimony of the autopsy of Jerome Faulkner, the medical examiner's testimony of the autopsy of Dora Faulkner, all of the physical evidence that was recovered from the Suburban and the truck, the DNA analysis, the chemical analysis that was done on two different sprayers, one that was found in the truck and one that was found in the Suburban, a crossbow, arrows, all the different weaponry that was used, and the manner in which it was used, there is no corroborating evidence that Edward Campbell did this by himself. And there is no indication of trustworthiness in any one of these statements. I would point out to the court that in two different, just on a cursory review of this transcript, on two different places, in Edward Campbell's statements alone, not even looking at any of the other evidence, that his statements to the officers are not trustworthy. He indicates on 5972, he starts to say he didn't do anything and there aren't any fingerprints. Well, of course there aren't any fingerprints because he burned the whole house down. And he says, there are some fingerprints maybe on those blue tubs because, of course, those weren't burned. But when he says he didn't do anything else, and then Lieutenant Deed says, well, hold on. He told me he moved the bodies. And then Edward Campbell immediately says, oh, thanks. He immediately understands that perhaps he needs to come off that a little bit. Not trustworthy, Your Honor. I would also show you that on 6012 that he says, do you have any recommendations about how I can manipulate the media to get an attorney for my son? I believe that this entire transcript is manipulation. Edward Campbell knew he was not going to be available. And he made these statements so that perhaps he could take the fall from Eric in this particular situation. And there's no doubt that Edward Campbell was an evil man. That's not, the state's not making a position that he wasn't. But the statements that he made, Your Honor, are not admissible under any hearsay exception. They are not admissible because there is no independent evidence of the trustworthiness of the statements. I would also say, Judge, that under the residual hearsay, that it's the same test. It's a 6-part test. But one of the tests, one of the 6 parts of the test, shows that there has to be some general reliability and general trustworthiness of this hearsay statement that is trying to, that the defendant is trying to admit. And I would just tell you that the proper statement possesses circumstantial guarantees of trustworthiness, and there is nothing that has been shown by the defendant, and I don't believe they will be able to show, but there is general trustworthiness about this or any other statement that Edward Campbell made to anybody else. And I ask that you not allow these or any of Edward Campbell's statements in the evidence.
You know, I think the statement that there's no corroboration is simply not true. I mean, well, first of all, there are statements that obviously that Mr. Campbell made to police, and some of these statements tend to corroborate what he told the police during those statements. Now, I understand the state doesn't have to introduce them. If it's saying it's not going to introduce those, I think that is a layer to the argument. The problem is, as far as the corroboration goes, there was evidence collected, and other than a GSR kit that shows two grains on Mr. Campbell's right hand, 24 hours after, more than 24 hours after, or around 24 hours after the Faulkners were killed. There's not corroborating evidence that he actually participated in the assaults. Now, there might be corroborating evidence that he tried to get away. But, you know, what the state's doing is saying, you know, you've got to prove that you didn't do this, and that's not the standard. And Mr. Campbell's statements admitting that he was involved, he starts out saying he wants an attorney. He admits that he did the acts. He talks about wanting to make these masks. He talks about wanting to steal their identities. He says that Eric didn't pick the house, which Eric says he didn't pick the house. Of course, that's in statements that aren't in evidence. But, Your Honor, there are independent reasons throughout this transcript that are consistent with the evidence in this case, including things he said about the assault on Holly Campbell that are corroborated by the evidence, or that will be corroborated, we believe, by the evidence. Things that he says about taking the guns in the house. Of course, he did have the guns. And so to say that because he's unavailable, that Mr. Campbell can't take advantage of the advantage he would have if he was here to be cross-examined is just simply, the rule is not designed that way. And we would contend that it should be admitted, Your Honor, for the reasons we've stated. And there's, you know, there is scientific evidence that they found in the car. I mean, the one person who says who used it is Edward Campbell. Much of the evidence that they found was found in the red truck. The evidence of the weaponry and everything. So I would contend that the circumstances do support Edward Campbell's statement of what happened, that medical examiners' reports will show multiple weapons used, just like Edward Campbell used against Holly Campbell. Just like, of course, like Mr. Campbell described in his statements to the police. But more importantly, it shows a personality and a pattern in the type of person who does something like that. And so we would contend that they're admissible for those reasons, Your Honor.
Note for the record, this is early in the trial of this particular case, and this particular evidence was premature, given the circumstances that we had. I cannot find, based upon the evidence been presented so far, that they're corroborating circumstances of which would ensure the trustworthiness of his statements, which have already been made by Mr. Campbell. Also, I've not had the benefit of the entire study. And that doesn't mean they may not come in at some future time, but not now. So, you still got a problem?
Your Honor?
You still got a problem with 315?
No, I want to be convenient to the jury, but we'll be ready to resume at 2:15 if,
Okay, I mean, does that make any difference, Lane?
we'll just be ready when the court's ready.
Okay, we're going to do this. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch recess at this point. During this time, it's your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. You do not talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. Further, you do not to talk to anyone else, to have anyone else to talk with you or say anything in your presence about this case. If you're provided any information at all about this case, you need to let the sheriff know about it when you come in. Have no contact or communication with anyone participating in this trial. Don't do any independent inquiry, investigation on your own about any issue in this case, and do not form or express any opinion about this case during this time. That, while everyone else will remain seated, I'm going to excuse the 18 of you and ask that you return and assemble the jury room at 2:15 this afternoon. 2:15 again, we go by that clock, but that's your excuse. Rachel Fletcher is absent. Anything direct to say?
Nothing would have to
Anything direct to the defendant?
No, sir.
If this is likely to come up again, I would appreciate a transcript. If you'd like to review it.
Yeah.
Or defendant's exhibit 3.
Just give them that.
Okay, so you leaving that with the clerk? She can make me a copy.
I can, but it hadn't been admitted, just so.
I understand that.
Yeah, that.
Mr. Jackson, that's 2:15.
Everyone?
Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Now, we're going to be in recess until 2:15. I'll say there's something off with it.
Sure.